Newton fell down a couple of steps and landed in the mud where the apes were bowing down to him. Newton cried out, "Don't tell me it's happened again." Callisto and his crew looked depressed and said, "It has happened again." "I asked you not to. Newton ran up to the big gorilla and yelled, "Tell me this is all an illusion, a dream. Wait, hit me. No, don't hit me." Newton screamed out, "What's going on?" The apes in Newton's crew didn't know what was the matter with Newton. Newton looked about for Zintar. His robot wasn't in sight. Newton ran up to the wall of his castle and punched a hole in it with his mighty artificial limb. Suddenly the whole entire island began to shake and rumble from an earthquake. The fog condensed into rain, and the wind began to start up. The apes looked frightened. Newton didn't know where he was, or what he was doing. Callisto ran up to him and asked, "Newton, did you just wake up out of a sleep? When was your last touch with reality?" Suddenly another earthquake started up. It was stronger than the last one. The walls around the castle began to crack up. Newton grabbed himself around the head and yelled out with great confusion. The only thing I can remember last time was when I tried to say I was sorry to the emperor of that planet I attacked. Callisto said, "Newton, you not only attacked it, you destroyed it. Don't you remember?" "No," Newton yelled out. Suddenly a strong lightning bolt shot out from somewhere and shattered the huge 100-foot statue. 100-foot stone statue. Oh, the huge 100-foot stone bird Newton made his apes slaves and ship crew worship. Everyone was showered by the debris. Mass confusion started up among the living. The whole world seemed to be falling apart. The huge statue Newton had Zintar build of himself began to rock back and forth. Suddenly a lightning bolt flashed out from around the mountain and shattered the huge rock head. The gigantic sword snapped off and crashed on the wall of the castle, killing more apes. The huge statue tipped backwards and crashed down into the sea. Suddenly the whole entire island began to shake more. All of a sudden, a quarter of the rock island ripped apart from the remaining island and slid down into the sea. The whole castle began to crack up. Everyone began to run around from a loss with their own reality. Callisto ran over to the edge of the new cliff and gasped in terror. The island was going under the sea. Lightning began striking the castle and the living. No one knew what to do. Newton's crew ran into the castle. Sergeant Storm yelled out, We've got to get a hold on ourselves. There's a logical explanation for this." Newton let out another yell from all the confusion that was going on around him, then fell up against the wall of his castle. He closed his eyes, hoping that when he would wake up, he would find himself back with reality. Newton's eyes flashed open when he heard someone scream. He screamed too. The sea began to come up over the edge of the cliff. Everywhere he looked, the water was rising. Newton ran into the castle's dining room and slammed the doors, locking the apes out. He ran up the stairs with his crew. Newton and his crew heard a big crash. The doors crashed open and all the seawater rushed into the room with drowned apes. The water knocked over the furniture and smashed up against the walls. Newton flipped out and started singing as the walls and ceilings gave way from the strong earthquakes. They all ran up to the highest part of the castle. That was the castle tower, which was now the only thing standing out of the sea. Newton flipped out and began punching the water as it came up the stairs. Suddenly, Zintar emerged from the angry sea and floated up the stairs, using its tractor beam to keep it from sinking. Newton ran up to the roof of the tower with his crew and yelled out, "Let's get out of here." Suddenly the sea came up over the rim of the castle tower. They were now all sea. The island and castle was gone. A few minutes later, they all found themselves back aboard Britannia with seawater at their feet. And a surprise, Matt Mason was beamed up also. A few minutes later, Newton found himself sitting in his throne, watching the stars zip by on the viewing screen. His crew were sitting at their posts, thinking over what had happened. Newton said confusedly, "Did it really all happen? How could that entire island sink like that, anyway?" Mason sat back in his seat and said, "Well, I will tell you this. If there is a God in heaven, he didn't want you on that island." Newton sat back and said, "Or world, for that matter." Newton's crew looked bothered from Newton. He had just snuffed out another civilized race. The big question now was, when was he going to have another bout with insanity? That's all I'm going to read, I think.
There's a brand new dance, but it's not very clear. Ooh, fashion.
Anyway. Oh shoot, the TV's going. Doggone it. Oh well. Since I've come to the end of this tape, I would read the tape Emperor Mutant to you, but I don't have enough tape to finish it. You just get maybe a couple pages out of it. It was really hard for me to read those last couple of those last few. Shoot. Oh, what the heck? I'm just trim this off. Those last two stories to you because I found them really kind of dull. That's the only reason why I wrote them is because I was trying to improve the Horrible Newton's stories. See, the Horrible Newton. I mean, well, on this tape, which you're watching, the last part of this tape, which you're watching, the stories, all because of slaves, yes, into an ape, and this last story, the mutant's home is its castle. Those last three stories are the beginning part of my first Newton book called The Horrible Newton, which I wrote back in 1974. 11 years ago. Well, almost 11 years ago. 10 and a half years ago. Anyway, what I'm getting at is all because of slaves. Yes, it went ape, and well, this his home is his castle. They were originally called, all because of slaves, was called Newton Attacks. Yes, it went ape was called Newton Conquers the Ape Planet, and A Mutant's Home is its castle was called Newton's Castle. And they were really bad as far as Newton stories go. They used to be really good. I thought they were great when I was a kid when I first read them out, but when I read them now, or if I play them back on tape or something like that, it's like an insane person wrote them, or did them. And anyway, I was thinking of publishing my Newton, and I wanted to experiment. I wanted to see if I could improve the Horrible Newton for publication by changing it. So I took the Horrible Newton and put it into this book, only change it and try to improve it. And the stuff I just read to you, I wrote, gosh, 4 years ago. Well, it was about 6 years later after I did the Horrible Newton. And I was trying to improve it for publication. I was experimenting by writing it into, or now taping it into this book, Newton the Great. And Newton the Great is a book all about the improved Newton series. It goes right from the Horrible Newton, tells about Newton's history and upcoming thing, which will be in the next tape. Well, if I can get it on there. And it ends with the final chapter of Newton called, where it doesn't have a name to it, Newton the Great, but it ends in the final Newton book where Newton takes on the Black Mutant, who has become the new Newton.